Hey guys, Brendan here. Today we're going to be talking about lunges. I'm going to be starting with some basic variations, progressing our way up to some harder variations. I'll be talking ourselves through the movement, some tips and tricks along the way. Not necessarily everything you need to know, but certainly enough to get you started. And if you haven't subscribed already to the channel, please consider doing so. Smash that like button if you feel that this has brought some value to your life. And drop a comment down below if you have any questions or just want to simply let me know your gratitude for the content that I'm creating. And that definitely helps motivate me to continue doing what I'm doing. Without further ado, let's get into it. So one of the first variations you want to start with is a stationary lunge, and then we're going to progress from there. And we can use something like the broomstick if we're going to be doing the stationary lunge that is assisted. So we're going to start with the assisted stationary lunge. So that's in fact the first one. And you can assist yourself with a couple of different tools or a couple of different ways. So we can hold on to something stationary that's stable, such as a chair, or if you're at home, or if you're in a gym environment, find yourself a sturdy squat rack and you can just hold onto a metal beam. Just make sure you check your surroundings. You don't jam your finger into something that's dangerous, or you don't kick something and hurt your legs or somebody else around you. Another device you can use is a suspension training system. So the popular brand of this is a TRX. However, if you're on a budget and you want something basically exactly the same, but for far less cost, you can go to Kmart and you can get yourself a suspension training system for 25 Australian dollars. These absolutely suffice. They do have a maximum weight capacity of 100 kilos, so you may not want to swing from them, but if you're over 100 kilos, you can still use this, because if you're leaning against it, you're not actually putting your entire body weight on it. You're just putting part of your body weight on it. So it'll still do the job for just about everything you need to do. So I'm going to first show you the variation with the stick, and now, or the broomstick, dowel rod. Basically, you want to take, I'll start at the front of the frame. We want to take a stride back. The stride is going to vary based on your limb length, height, shortness, whatever. But basically for me, I want to have my back leg straight on my toe, my front leg with my heel on the ground, and my hips are going to be placed somewhere slightly in front of the middle. So that's the middle, my hips are just above it, just in front. And from here, what I'm going to do is concentrate on dropping my back knee straight to the ground. So at the moment I'm going to use the stick just to help show you where my joints are going. So I'm going to try to bring, I might have to take that back foot back just a touch. I'm going to try to bring the back knee straight down, and I'll bring the stick forward, and you can see on the way up, I envision something pulling my head straight up, and I'm going to try to come straight up. So a lot of people do lunge and they go forward like this, putting a lot of weight over their front foot, but we want to try to keep that vertical movement pathway like that. And if you've got good control, you can absolutely let the back knee drop all the way to the floor, but you don't want to be bashing into the floor and hurting yourself. So if you're a little bit unsure, then you can just stop shy. That's not a problem. Now the idea of using the broomstick is to give you something stable to hold on to, because when you're starting with this, you might find that balance is a bit of a challenge for you. So that just gives you something to keep your balance. I often hold the broomstick on the open side of the stance. So if my left leg is forward, the stick is in my right hand. If my right leg is forward, the stick is in my left hand. Because if I'm going to fall, you certainly can, use the stick to go around like that, but I would try to keep my weight this way, so if I'm going to fall, it's going to be this way, and the stick's ready there to catch me. And then as you get comfortable with it, you may stop using this for assistance and stop relying on it too much, and just start sliding your hand up and down until you're more comfortable with it. Okay, so next we're going to have a look at the TRX, or the suspension training assisted lunge. So this is the suspension trainer. And in terms of how long to have this, it doesn't really matter. You probably don't want it super short, bit of touch on the longer side isn't going to be a problem. But I've got this from the anchor point, which is about a foot above my head, and I'm 6'2", so about 7 foot high. The actual length strapped to the anchor point is roughly 6 foot, or 1.5 meters, bit over. But again, it's not a huge deal. As long as it's sturdy and you're not going to pull the thing over that it's attached to or break anything. Now my stride length is going to be the same as the stationary stride. It's hard to see my entire body in the shot. I'm going to keep my head in the shot so it's easier for, getting the message across. But I've taken a stride. You can play around with that. Typically, a shorter stride will use a bit more quadriceps, so the front of the thigh on the front leg. And a bigger stride is going to mean you're using a bit more glutes on the back leg and less quad on the front leg. So it's just a slightly different variation of the lunge, and that's not a problem. So we're going to have our arms straight, and my feet are going to be somewhere between, if I was to drop a straight line down from where my hands are and my shoulders, pretty much I'm going to have my feet under my elbows here, and then I'm going to take a step back. If it doesn't feel quite right, then you can readjust. That's good. So my feet, my heels are in line with my elbows here. And that may change depending on your body, because my arms are going to be different length to somebody else's. So experiment, find what feels comfortable and right for you. But the goal here is to keep your trunk vertical, drop straight down at the knee, the back knee, and then come straight up. And then these straps are here to help you get up if you need to. And they're also going to help with balance. You may do 10 to 15 or more or less, depending on your resistance training goals, on one leg, and then switch legs and then do the other. Now I'll quickly show you a couple of reps next to a stationary solid assistance, so like a pole. So if we find ourselves a cage, we can set ourselves up to hold onto that and just keep my hand by its side, and I can do my lunges. If I lose my balance, I can grab onto it, or I can use it to help pull myself up. Now this could be a door frame if you're at home. So next up, let's take a look at the stationary unassisted lunge. This is pretty straightforward. It's the same thing, but we're going to do it just by balancing. So take your stride, maybe start with your arms out a little bit so you can help with your balance. Have a few practice goes. Doesn't hurt to be near a wall if you need to reach out and grab it. Once you get comfortable with it, you can drop your hands down by your side. If you don't know what to do with your hands, I recommend putting them on your hips, or maybe on your ears. Or if you want to challenge yourself a bit more, you could put them straight up like this. So that's the next progression. The one after that is an alternating stationary lunge. You may want to go back to assisted, so you might grab the TRX and alternate each rep with your feet whilst holding on, and then put them down and try unassisted. But I'm going to go straight into unassisted because I think that is pretty clear what we need to do. So what I normally get people to do is try lunging forward first. So take a step forward, lunge down, and then push off the ground and come back to the starting position. And then alternate legs. Now personally, I prefer the next version, which is where we take a step back. I find it's a little bit easier on our balance to take a stride back, lunge, and step back up to the front foot. Now how do you think we can make this variation harder? It's pretty simple. We just simply hold some weights. So whether that be dumbbells in each hand, or we want to hold a bar on our back, or maybe a sandbag. One of my favorite variations is holding a weight plate, ideally a weightlifting weight plate because of the full diameter. So just grab something light to begin with, like a 5 kilo weight plate, maybe even a 2.5 if you've got one at your gym. Arms straight, and hold that over your head. Could be a medicine ball, and then try your lunges like that. So we call this an overhead lunge. I would call this an overhead alternating stationary lunge. You can also do this with a bar. However, with a bar, you may only have the option of a 20 kilo bar, so it's a pretty heavy weight to start with. So that was actually one of the harder variations. You won't do that one right away. So in order, just a quick recap, we've got a stationary assisted lunge, either with a broomstick, a TRX, a solid frame to hold on to, whether that be a door frame or a squat cage, that's fine. And then we've got a freestanding stationary lunge, which is unassisted. And then we're going to progress into a alternating lunge. Whether you step forward with each stride or whether you step back, that's up to you. Personally, I prefer stepping back. I think it's a little bit better. And then I have spoken about the overhead, but it's actually later on. I would go from here into a walking lunge. So I don't have a lot of space here, and also it's going to be hard to shoot. So I'll show you a couple of steps and you can imagine the rest. Basically, you find yourself a strip in the gym, an area that's clear so you can do it. Now be very, have your gym etiquette, be mindful of other members. If you're going to have a bar on your back, definitely be mindful. Use weight collars because you don't want to run the risk of a weight sliding off and landing on somebody, hitting somebody or something. Making yourself look like a fool but hurting people. That's not what we're at the gym for. So hands on your hips, behind your head or up in the air, or maybe holding onto some light dumbbells. We're going to find ourselves a strip and we're going to go ahead, take a lunge forward and then step up to the front foot. And this is quite natural because it's sort of like how we walk. We walk one step forward in front of the other. We can also do backwards lunges, but obviously there's a bit more risk and you have to push off, which is what I don't like about returning to the starting position of this stationary alternating lunge. So walking forward is a bit more intuitive. Okay, so again, in order: stationary assisted lunge, stationary unassisted lunge, stationary alternating lunge, now walking lunges, and then another progression from there. We can get a box and do a Bulgarian split squat or just a lunge with our back foot raised. I would start with a box because it's stationary, but there is a really fun, harder variation I will show you. Let's start with the stationary. Get yourself your box. So you've got your box, put your back foot on that. So start with your front foot in the right position. Take your back foot back. You can be on your toe. That's not a problem. Let's have a go doing a couple of reps. Your balance, as you can see, it's a bit harder. But once you get in the position, you'll be fine. And go ahead and do your lunges. Now this doesn't have to be a rigid box like this. It could be a bench like this one, where it's a bit softer. If it hurts for you to have your toes in that position on the back foot, you can get yourself something like a sandbag and put that on there, and then you can put your foot down on the top of your foot. I've had to do this with a client who had rheumatoid arthritis. That was a way more comfortable variation for him. And then go ahead and do your lunges. Bulgarian split squat, but it's basically a lunge in terms of the movement pattern. Now, one of my favorite variations is actually a TRX Bulgarian split squat or a TRX lunge. So I'm going to put my back foot into the TRX. You've got this little loop here to stop it sliding too far one way. So just make sure that's maxed out so it's not going to slip once your foot's in. Put your back foot in. I like to reach around my right arm for my left foot, my left arm for my right foot, and reach behind myself. But find what works for you. This might be too hard simply just to get into position. If that's the case, don't do this one. But this is a pretty hard variation. And again, you can make it harder by holding weight. I wouldn't recommend having weight over you. I'd rather hold onto dumbbells so that if you need to let go, you can just get rid of them quickly and regain your balance. From here, hop out, till your foot's in a pretty good position. I'm going to switch legs. My hip is still not feeling that great from hip bursitis a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So that's your TRX split squat or lunge. It's a lunge pattern. So that's a really hard one. Now, some other harder variations is obviously holding weights. I've mentioned that. So you would pretty much choose a variation that I've gone through. You could do the stationary lunge. Normally that's the best option when you're doing weighted, but a lot of people grab weight to do their walking lunges down the AstroTurf strip. I really like to do stationary weighted lunges in a cage because much like a squat, you can set up your safety rails at the bottom of your range of motion. You can unrack the bar in a safe position from an ergonomic height with the hooks at armpit level. Unrack it, take a step back, take your stride, go ahead and do your lunges. Safeties are there to catch you if you can't get up, and you can really load the bar up that way. So I have built up to 60 and 70 kilo stationary lunges, and it totally destroys your glutes, quads and hammies, and it's fantastic. So give that one a go. I won't shoot that today. However, if you want me to cover that in a future video, drop a comment down below to letting me know, and I'll just do that one by itself as a standalone video in a bit more detail. So that's it for now. Just a quick recap. We have as a starting progression, or as a starting option and variation, our stationary assisted lunges, whether it be with a dowel rod, a TRX, or a stationary frame that's sturdy. Moving on to alternating lunges, assisted, then moving on to stationary unassisted lunges, and then moving on to alternating lunges without assistance, and then moving on to our walking lunges. Then we're moving on to our Bulgarian split squat, which is a lunge pattern. Basically, we're going to raise our back foot onto a step or solid object. And then if you want to try the hardest of the lot that I've shown today, we can do a Bulgarian split squat with the back foot into a TRX, which is an unstable surface. And if you want to make any of these variations harder, simply hold weight, whether it be dumbbells in your hand, kettlebells in your hand, sandbag on your back, barbell on your back, or a weight plate over your head, or a barbell over your head. They're all options you have to choose from, but choose wisely, start low, go slow, don't push yourself beyond your capacity, because if you hurt yourself, you can't train, and then you're certainly gonna digress in your training program. So we wanna make sure that we progress in the correct way. Injury prevention is paramount. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.